Okay, good morning. Just want to get my stand corrected here. 1 second. Sorry for the technical difficulties here. Okay, it should work. Okay, here we are on the, what day? 8th day of Nissan. Yom Yom. Each day, a new day. So what's our launching off point for today? The following. Every soul has its particular avoida, as we're learning in Tanya. The quality of avoida, the difference of avoida, a tzaddik, a beinoni, whether the avoida comes from the level of the animal, the natural love, or it comes from the intellectual love, etc. Everybody is different in the areas of intellect, which we're associating in today's, and all the Tanya we've been learning lately, with the level of neshama, intellect, and emotion, which we'll associate with ruach. These are two of the three high, right? Nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Nefesh is the bodily, physical bottom, of this. It's associated with olam asiyah, the world of doing. Ruach with the world of yetzirah, and that's the emotion. And then bria, which is associated, and then the world of bria is associated with seichel. And we have been talking, we'll continue to talk about that in the context of the reward for a mitzvah. Just a second here. Okay. So everyone has a particular avoda in the areas of intellect and emotion, in accordance with that soul's nature and character. It's written, from my foes have you given me wisdom. So this is a very interesting and powerful psychological point here, meaning, he explains, from the evil tendencies that one detects in his natural traits, one can become wise and know how to handle the correction of these truths and how to subordinate his powers to the service of God's. In other words, one's challenges become enablers, or in the wide expression that we always come across in Chassidus, there is a light which comes from darkness. So one's defects can become empowerers to transformation. Pretty powerful, I think. Okay, today's Tanya. Excuse me. Lessons in Tanya, page 538. Yeah, 538. And then the classical Tanya, Nun Beis, page Nun Beis. Okay, we've been talking about the effect on the neshama, as the neshama goes up to Gan Eden, the effect of whether one's service, one's avoida, down here below, his mitzvahs and his Torah, whether that person's Torah and mitzvahs have been done with natural love and fear or intellectual love and fear, right? Which we associated earlier with the levels of chai, an animal, lives naturally, the animal, the chai of the chai, or the medaber, or the speaking person. And now we're layering that onto the notion of ruach and neshama, the middle layer of the soul and the higher level of the soul. So we had said that when the person down here does the avodah with kavanas that come from the natural love, that creates an illumination of the soul's the aura that's available to the soul in the lower Gan Eden. And when the person's avoida is characterized by kavana that's done at the level of medaber, which is intellectual love and fear, his baininess, etc., which we say gives birth to something new, that allows the soul to experience a ha'ora, a ray from the upper level of Gan Eden. You know why my thing keeps falling down here? If I raise it up high, it won't. Okay. Okay, so that's our start. This is speaking about souls. And when we say souls here, we're speaking about the level of the soul called neshama, as opposed to the level of the soul called ruach, right? Nefesh, ruach, and neshama. So when the level of the soul that one taps in doing avodah down here below with intellectual love and fear is equated with the higher level, with neshama. And that level of neshama is mamish, which, as he says, as I said, it's a characteristic of a human who has bechira and seichel, as we said earlier, and he repeats that here. Shehin bechinas moichin de gadlus. That's called great brains, or large brains, fullness of brains. So when a person operates down here below, has operated down here below in that level of kavanah, so when that soul, that person merits a level of revelation which is what's the right word? Which is designed for the higher level of the soul, which is called neshama. So that person gets a aura of the Or Ein Sof Baruch Hu at the level of neshama. Aval chinas haruach shel tzadikim, the lower level of the neshama of tzadikim, v'chein shar kol neshamas Yisrael, right? Because a tzaddik generally is at that level where the highest level of the soul is operating and therefore relating to the level of the Or Ein Sof that the person is receiving her aura from. Whereas the lower level of soul, which is the province of most of us, we're operating at the level, hopefully at the level of ruach, right, which is the natural love and fear of Hashem. So that illumination that's incumbent upon us at that level, those of us who have served Hashem, who have served Hashem with a hidden love, the love which is concealed in the heart of the generality of Jewish people. So ein oilus l'sham. So our neshama, now we're talking about the neshama as an entity, not the level of neshama called neshama. The neshama as an entity doesn't get up to a revelation of the higher level. It's ein oilus l'sham. It doesn't go up to there where the neshama level of the neshama gets bathed in the Or Ein Sof, except with Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. So when we're up in Gan Eden, every Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, the average bloke who served Hashem with some level of kavanah at the level of love and of ava v'yira tivis, natural love and fear, will have a Shabbos, a different experience, because on Shabbos our souls will be elevated to that upper level, which is the natural province of the tzaddik who served Hashem with ava v'yira sichlis, with the mindful and with the mindfulness of love and fear. So we'll get an elevation in Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh only then. And by the way, if you want to know how that elevation occurs, there's a pillar that connects the lower Gan Eden with the upper Gan Eden. Derech ha'omed. This is called the pillar, Shemagia hatachton, Shemagan Eden hatachton, from the lower level of Gan Eden to the Gan Eden ha'elyon, to the higher level of Gan Eden. Okay. Shehu olam habriya. And we talked about this before. The higher level of Gan Eden is olam habriya. The lower level of Gan Eden is the olam of Yetzirah. So Bria is called Gan Eden Elyon, and His'anug al Hashem, to have tainug, delight with Hashem, to delight in Hashem, Olahanis meziv Shekhinah, and to have pleasure from the ray of Shekhinah. Now this is what about this sentence to follow is an underlining sentence, and this is applicable to us down here below as well as above. The following. There's no pleasure, there's no delight to created seichel, to created intellect. Ella bibashem maskil umavin v'yadea umasig, except to the extent that one understands or grasps with his intellect and understands and knows and contains and gets a hold of pesichle in his intellect ubenasoi, masha efshalai, that which is possible for each of us to achieve, lahovan lahaski ma'or ein baruch hu, at whatever level we're able to grasp, understand and grasp something of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. There is no delight and pleasure that's akin to that, depending on and in relation to whichever level we're able to reach. But whatever level we're able to reach in Masig, to understand, or Maven, and to grasp and to understand and to das and to know and internalize the Or Ein Sof, there's no greater pleasure than that. And how do we do that? Of course, the entry point is through Al Yidei Hachmasei Ubenasoi, through one's Chochmah and Bina in Hashem Yisborach. Ama'iras Shom, and that quality, that light radiates there up in Gan Eden. Be'olam HaBriya, in the world of Bria, when it's Al Pi Seichel. U'masha zoiches neshamas eila la'alis l'mayla me'hamalachim. Now it turns a little different. Now we're comparing, remember, back to the mashal of when we serve Hashem, or a human serves Hashem, that's the level of medaber. And when an animal the animal serves Hashem, in that the animal does only what it's created to do, which is a certain mila, right? The animal, we have a mila that we have bechira, free choice, but that sometimes can get in our way. The animal has no, like the malachim, right? They're chayus hakodesh. They're on the mission they're on is never perverted by a side thought that says, maybe I don't want to do the mission. So the animal has that mila, right? Which is that simplicity, which is important. We have the mila of more complexity, and when we utilize that complexity to make the right choices, then, like as our Yom Yom says, we can use the opportunity that we've rejected, the dark side, and move to the light side, and that creates an even higher elevation. So that which the neshamas merit to go out on, to come up, excuse me, yeah. And that which neshamas, this is the medaber, right? Our capability as medaber, as speaking highest levels of creation over the angels. So that elevation, that merit that we have, that we can merit to go higher than the malachim, even though they're serving Hashem at a, even though we may be serving Hashem, even even only at the natural level, but we are intrinsically at a higher level. Even though we're serving Hashem only at the lower level. Why is that we have this virtue? Because when we serve Hashem with love and fear, this is the either at the natural level, ava hativis, yira hativis, or at the intellectual level, ava sichlis and yira sichlis. So we have, as we've hinted at, we've read in the Yom Yom, and he's now bringing it to the table, we have this capability, which is iskafia sitra achra. We can subjugate the sitra achra through our bechira and through our natural love or our intellectual love. And that produces a tremendous power, tremendous energy, as I've said, and we'll repeat it many times, because Hasidus says it like the advantage of light which comes from darkness. So we have that capability over the animal. We have the ability, we can transform the sitra achra, which is enclosed in our bodies, in one of two ways, either by turning from evil, and choosing life instead of choosing death, turning away from evil. And we, unlike the angels, have taivas that we can overcome, or as we said in the Yom Yom, utilize as energies for propelling us forward. So we have this capability to conquer the taivas, l'shavram, and to break them. That's on the negative side, surmeira. And we have the positive side, to do good. So to take over, the lethargy that may be inherent in our simple bodily, which draws us down a bit, and overcome that lethargy and do mitzvahs bezrizos, with a strong effect. The heim bali bechira. And we are bali bechira. We are ones who have been given the ability to choose. Liv chebera, chas v'sholem, to choose either evil, ubachru b'toiv, or to choose good. And when we choose good, or when we make that choice, then we, the humans, different from the animals, we are like fayla sitra achra. And this is a lesson from the Zohar. It says, when a person is achfaya l'sitra achra, subjugates the sitra achra, when a person overcomes the negativity, the drag into the other side, or on the other side, uses the Ava Tivis or the Ava Sichlis to propel him with a strong kavana to the positive side. So the Zohar says, then there is the Stalak Yikoda B'Kulu Olmen. Then the glory of Hashem burst forth throughout all the worlds. Ki Yisun Ha'or, he doesn't finish it, like the advantage of light from darkness, as we've said above, and as I've said above. Hine Kol Zehu B'Madir HaNeshamis. So all of this is in the dwelling place of Neshamis. Now here we're back to the difference in the light which is available to the level of Neshama versus the light which is available to the level of Ruach. So Hine Kol Zehu Madir HaNeshamis B'Kamen HaMidasa. This all has to do with the revelation of light that's coming to the Neshamas in the place that they stand. May make a correction here. He's not talking about general neshamas. Neshamas, not the level of neshama. Backtrack what I'm saying. He's talking about neshamas and as entities. When the neshama goes upstairs, all of that wondrous stuff we said is happening, depending, yes, on the level. But that's happening in that place, in B'Makom Amidasan, in the place where the neshama is standing. So that's all about the difference of effect in terms of the ha'ora, the ray of light that one will get, depending on the tzaddik, whether you're at the level of tzaddik with neshama, or whether you're at a level which is hitting the lower level, which is ruach. Ach terosin, however, that's all about the effect, depending on the level. Af terosin v'vdosin, in other words, how you serve the Hashem. But your Torah and your avodah, there's a difference between the ha'ora, the ray of light that's shining in those lights, and the spheros, which is enlivening those worlds. So, your Torah and your avodah, that work that you've done, however you've done it, that gets invested and included not in the dwelling place where your soul is, but in the yud spheres itself, which are enlivening that dwelling place where your soul lives. Which those, the 10 spheros of the world. Remember, the sphera is like, we've talked about, we used this in an analogy before. The sphera is a combination of a light, or that's an energy, and a vessel to contain it. Right, and that's the electrical energy contained in a light bulb. What's the point of it? To illuminate the room, right? But the electricity and the light bulb are predecessors, so to speak, and here we're using it as deeper levels, which are there to enlighten the room, which the room is on the outside. The Yud Sephiros are the internality of worlds. That's might be a good way to say it. They're internality of the world. And the dwelling space is the externality of the worlds. So when the Torah and avodah that one does down here below have to do with getting light from the Yud Spheros of the world, which are, as he says now, Bechinus Elokus. They are godliness, the Or Ein Sof, and they are the light of the Ein Sof, Hamisyachud Bahem Betachlis HaYichud, which are united with the souls in a complete unity. And so the Torah and avodah that we do, now it says there is a different effect, right, depending on whether it's the kavana tivis or whether it's the kavana sichlis. So the Torah that we do in depends on that. The Yud Spheres, the Bria, we will get, our neshamas will get, and really are getting, except that the illumination and the revelation of it is when our souls are get in the Gan Eden. The neshamas get a revelation of the spheres of what? Hainu b'yud spheres de Bria. There's a revelation of the 10 spheres of Bria, the higher world to the soul, al yidei dechila v'rechim sichlim, as you would expect. If one served God and with his Torah and his or her avoda with yira, ava, sichlis, then that Torah and avoda is going to turn on a light switch, so to speak, in the spheres. A light switch means an illumination to us. I mean, it's always turned on, but an illumination to us from the world in the spheres of Bria. And if we're serving Hashem with a kavanah, which is the avativis, that's going to turn on the switch, the revelation to our souls in the yud spheres of Yetzirah, the lower world. As he says, through our service, our Torah and avoda in a manner of natural love. Now you should know that this is the Torah and the avoda that we've done. It will turn on a switch, that's my metaphor, turn on a switch of illumination from the spheros of either Yetzirah, if it's done with kavana of natural kavana, avoda tivis, or abriya, if it's done in a higher level. But you should know that those spheres of all worlds, of any world, even if we started in the spheres of the world of Asiya, they're all inheriting from higher levels. So Yetzirah and Bria have within them, Besoichem, Mulubeshes, Yud Spheres de Atzilus, have embedded in them the 10 spheres of Atzilus, and they are united with them in absolutely, utterly, completely. The Yud Spheres de Atzilus, this now going higher than that. So this is our, right, look, mitzvah bli kavana is a connection, right? Mitzvah meloshin savto v'chibur, right? Connection with what? Well, connection with some level of the ha'ora, of the ratzon of God's will. But it depends. It depends on the quality, what the soul is going to experience depends on the quality of that connection that one made down here below. And at different levels of quality, you're connecting with deeper levels of godliness. But all these deeper levels of godliness are coming from that singular source, and therefore have something of that singular source embedded in them. So working from the bottom up, the Yud spheres of Yetzirah have embedded in them a quality of the Yud spheres of Bria. The Yud spheres of Bria have embedded in them the qualities of the Yud spheres of Atzilus. And now we're back to the Tanya. And Yud spheres of Atzilus miyechedes betachlis b'matzel and seborikel. And the Yud spheres of Atzilus are embedded in and have a quality and pick up something of the essence of the emanator himself. So this is our soul. The soul as an entity is sitting in a room, right? It's sitting in a room, and it's getting the light that's in that room. And that's important. The room is Gan Eden Tachton or Gan Eden Elyon. The quality of light, the quality of energy, what's energizing that room is the spheros, right? So when the person is at the level of the neshama itself is an object, so to speak, is an entity sitting in the room. So the neshama is ein neklelas belakus the yud spheres. The entity of the neshama is not included in the 10 spheres. Ela amedis behecholas, here's the room. It stands in the chamber, in the room. Umadurim, which are the dwelling place of Bria or Yetzirah. So just to try to make this a little clearer, the level of kavanah that we have in the mitzvah is going to determine which room we're in, right? And which room we're getting the illumination from. And we've said if you've served Hashem with an avativis, only on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh you're going to get elevated to a higher room. But the room itself is a function of the Yud Spheres, which are the creative energies of that world, or that room, or that dwelling place, right? So you're going to sit in a room, and the neshama will sit in a room, and the neshama will get an illumination from the spheres that are connected with that room. And the spheres which are connected with that room are connected with the level in the room that's up higher in the world of Atzilus, and ultimately it's all connected to the Ein Sof Baruch Hu himself. But in any case, wherever you are, even here down here below, we're all getting something of Elokus, right? Different levels, some of us more conscious of it than others, some of us from levels higher or lower than others, right? And that's that, but the ray that we're getting is just a ray, and that's called Nenem Meziv HaShekhinah. That's the pleasure that the soul has sitting in the living room in the world of Bria, or sitting in the living room in the world of Yetzirah. Only from a ziv, a ray of the Shekhinah, who the Or Ein Sof Baruch Hu, but that ray of the Shekhinah is the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, Amiyuchedes B'Yud Sfiras de Bria. If you're sitting in the room in Bria, your soul is getting, it's getting, right? The light is on, you're getting the light from the light bulbs in the Bria or Yetzirah, but but the light bulb itself, what's illuminating the room, the energy of that room, is getting its power from the Yud Sfiras of that room, the Yud Sfiras of Bria in this case, or Yetzirah if it's a lower world. And this illumination that comes to the soul is a function of the quality of the Torah and avoida, the kavana, the lack of kavana, the level of kavana that one was involved in the avoida down here below. Ayin Zohar, Parshas V'Yakel, see in the Zohar, and it says, Ki schar mitzvah iha mitzvah atzma. In other words, the mitzvah that you do and the way that you do it is going to be the cause of the level of revelation and the experience of the revelation that you have up above. That's today's Tanya. So what? So what? Speechless, huh? I'm going to read you something here from Lessons in Tanya.
Avi?
Oh,
Avi.
good. Yeah,
Hi,
go.
sorry. Yeah. So what I'm understanding is that the soul that's residing in our body, enlivening our body,
Mm-hmm.
and is there, and then the different parts of our soul, higher parts of our soul, are being affected by what our body is doing to serve Hashem.
Or how our body is serving Hashem.
Okay, how? Okay.
I mean, what I mean, how our body, it's because this whole topic is whether you're serving Hashem with kavana tivis, natural love and fear, or whether it's with intellectual love and fear. Yeah.
All right, fine, thanks. So let's say that you're operating on the lower level.
Mm-hmm.
So then the neshama, the part of you that resides in these rooms that you're talking about, in these worlds.
In Gan Eden. These are the rooms in Gan Eden.
So then our neshamas are constantly involved with the other neshamas that have gone to Gan Eden after they're without their body?
No. Our neshama down here in the body is a reflection of a neshama. How to put this? Our neshama down here below is not bounded by our body, right? It's enclosed in our body at the time, but how do we have a sense of godliness? Because there's something being imbued into our neshama, even as a neshama is in our body, right? And the imbuing of that energy is primarily through mitzvahs, because mitzvahs are lashon chibur, savta v'chibur. So our soul down here in our body connects with the image of our soul at a higher level, which is up in the spiritual. Because if there weren't this connection, we wouldn't have that connection to godliness, because there needs to be a path by which we connect. And that path is the spirit. Now, is our neshama down here getting that illumination? The neshama down here is getting that illumination from different places, depending on the quality of the neshama, and its ability to serve God with intellectual love and fear or natural love and fear. So this becomes apparent. This is where our chapter is about. This becomes really apparent to know where you're getting it from. In the future, when the neshama goes up, you'll find out where the proximate source of the radiation of godliness that reaches your body was coming from. Either coming from, we're making this very simple. There are many, the Alter Rebbe's make it simple. There's many different levels, infinite levels. But generally, you'll have an awareness when your neshama goes up to above of where your root, I won't call it the root, but what room you are getting your light beam down from into your soul down here in the body. If you're serving God with natural love and fear, right? So when your soul goes up in the body, it will say, oh, that's where it was coming from. It was coming from the level of Gan Eden, which is the lower Gan Eden in the world of Yetzirah. And if you're serving God with Ava V'Yira Sichlis, right? You're putting more of yourself into it, right? Then when your soul goes up, it'll find itself, oh yeah, that's why I had those kinds of kavanas, why I was able to get deeper, because I contemplated down here below, I learned, and I created a different taste to my avoida, the same taste or flavor to my avoida by utilizing my powers of bina and hasoga. Okay, so I felt more, because that's what happens, right? The more that you contemplate and internalize what you're learning and become mindful of it, the richer the quality of your experience down here below. Where did that richness come from? It came from the fact that through that intellectual love and fear, so to speak, you were getting ha'ora from the world of Bria, the neshama from a higher level. So this neshama, the neshama is a spiritual thing. Just as we said before, that in the neshama itself, there are the 10 spheros, right? The neshama is an entity, like sitting in a room. The room is enlightened by the 10 spheros, so the neshama is getting the the infusion from the 10 spheros. Now, these 10 spheros themselves, they may manifest themselves in the world of, let's say, Bria, but they themselves are inter-included in a higher world, higher and higher. So ultimately, yeah, it's all coming from the simple atzmis hapeshitas, the simple atzmis of Hashem. But the experience of it, the ha'ora of it, depends on what you do down here. Also depends on the soul that you've inherited from, however, very few of us are original souls. We're souls that have been here before and souls that come from souls. But to answer your point simply, the neshama down here below is getting an experience from someplace up above. And what we're talking about in these chapters now is where are those places up above? Well, your soul will know when it gets there, but he's telling you now.
Meaning when a person passes.
Yeah. When you pass and your neshama goes to Gan Eden, you'll know which room you're in. And maybe you'll look up and it says that the neshamas up above are jealous of each other's. They still want to go higher, because the nature of the neshama is like a ball. It's like a ball full of a nice rubber ball. Push it down in water. Its nature is it wants to pop up, right? That's all of our intrinsic natures is to pop up. We want to be connected with God, right? And so there's a certain envy, and it's a hard word to describe, but envy of neshamas when they're looking up and see other neshamas popping up higher than they. But in any case, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, I've never learned anything about this really. I don't know, once you're there, I don't know if you can change your level after that. In other words, after you go up above. I don't know anything about that. But in any case, each one
No,
is soul. So yeah,
I'm sorry. Actually, you
is it?
do, and it's
Yeah.
through saying Kaddish below that you can
Oh,
affect those pillars that you were talking about.
yeah.
The neshamas go through those
All
pillars.
right, neshamas will have an aliyah. Your neshama should have an elevation. Right, very good. When you say Kaddish, and people say that on a yard site, that his neshama should have an aliyah. So, in other words, us down here below can affect that the ball will rise high, or the helium balloon will rise higher and higher. Very good. All right, I hope I answered that. That the neshama down here below is a reflection of a higher level of spirituality above. And if you want to know where it's coming from, well, you'll know when you get to Gan Eden, whether it's from Yetzirah or Bria or even higher. The takeaway that I take from this, but the Bechain, is based on the principle of what goes up must come down, and what goes up and what's down must go up. In other words, that that simply put, in the context of this, if I do a mitzvah with natural love and fear, right, just avativis, right. Well, let me put it this way. My wife asked me to take unload the car from our trip, right? And I'm wiped out. It's a 12-hour, 12 hours off and on. I've been driving. And we get home, and there's two ways, maybe possibly more, I can do it. I can do it reluctantly, right? I can do it, we'll call that Kabbalah oil. I'm doing it, right? But I'm not happy. If I do it with zrizas, not only do I feel better, but she feels better, and there's a better mood in the house, as opposed to when I walk in with a scowl on my face for having had to do this extra labor after 12 hours of driving. So the quality of things is very much different depending on the kavanah, right? So simply speaking, if the kavanah is deeper, higher, the experience of the mitzvah, the experience meaning the way I experience doing the mitzvah, and the way others experience it. When I give tzedakah reluctantly, or I give tzedakah with a smile on my face, right? There's a difference in that event. So similarly, when I do a mitzvah without kavanah, or when I do a mitzvah with kavanah, natural or intellect, there's a different experience. So to cultivate that will be meaning I'm cultivating a different quality of life, both in myself and in the world. Now, the mitzvah itself is the mitzvah. The mitzvah is tzavta v'chibur. That makes the connection. But just like in life, there are different qualities of connection, different ways of connection. So there are different qualities and ways of connection with the mitzvahs and the Torah and the mitzvahs that we do. The more kavanah, the more zrizas, the more happiness, the more simpler. Simpler shel mitzvah. What we should operate the simpler shel mitzvah, not just with mitzvah. Somebody has a hand up. Oh, Yehudas.
Well, what you just said harkens back to what we learned the other day, which is the way to bring out that kavana is through das, through having worked on your knowledge of and connection with God, knowing God more deeply, and the same, like you were talking about the example you gave with your wife, the same thing in a relationship. In order to have deeper kavana when you're doing something for that person, you need to have developed a deep relationship with them, a deep das. So I think that's the key.
Yeah, you say, I'll just back to my mushal. I'd rather walk into the house with all that stuff and see a smile on my wife's face than have her say, "What are you looking so good for?" You know,
right.
It's just a much nicer way of living, right? It reminds me of the story that Shea Taub once told about he and Manas Friedman had a debate. I don't know if you ever saw it, about which is Which is better, negative or positive? Now, I'm not going to go into it because the Torah tells us negatives have an advantage over positive. And Shei Stab was on the negative side, proving that negative is more powerful. And he uses the mashal that it's his wife's birthday. And he buys flowers and they arrange for dinner, right? And he gets caught up in a business meeting and he's late for dinner and he comes and you can imagine how she feels. And so the power of not arriving on time, the power of not doing is, has a great energy. And not showing up can be, and can have a lasting effect even more sometimes than showing up. That was the point of his story. So yeah, it makes a difference what kavanas you have when you do things. All right, anybody else?
I think I heard you mention this before, versus the positive of bringing the flowers. Like,
yeah,
I bought flowers.
What?
She feels like, yeah, thanks for bringing me flowers, but you didn't show up to the...
Yeah, but you didn't show up on time, right? So the flowers don't have the positive effect. So everything depends on the way you do it, all right? How that's going to be experienced and what effect that's going to have on you, the relationship, and the world. So that's all about kavanah. So let's try to act it out in our, simple thing. I mean, I have this opportunity every day. I go to 770 and I have, 3, 4, 5, 2 people who have their hand up. And it's such a difference depending on what mood I approach them with, If I've got something on my mind and that tzedakah is given just sort of offhandedly, or where I can put on a smile with the same dollar bill, depending on how I give it, can either produce a, that's all you can give, or thank you very much, And that's the difference in kavanah. All right, till we meet again tomorrow, your musician.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Okay.